I'd like to start this video off with a question. What are some things that come to mind when you see this logo? To me, I love the rebellious look to it. Although this might belong to a group of misfits trying to cause trouble, it might justify their actions with the amount of weight it carries. And sure enough, with proper context, you'll soon realize that this logo carries as much weight as a national flag. Even though this is in a motionless state, essentially not moving, this very logo will move an entire generation to strive to become better people, not by believing in themselves, but rather believe in the people that believe in you. This is the world of Gurren Lagann. The year is 2007. Studio Gainax is in their late years as an animation company and decided that they were not going to throw in the towel just yet. They decided to go back to their roots, mecha anime.
You dumbass. What the hell else do you think I'm talking about? We're gonna combine!
After making what is considered their magnum opus of mecha anime at the time, sustaining high viewership, collecting various sponsors, and their own line of products, they all huddled together to discuss, and they decided they got one more left in them. They wanted to make one more mecha anime. Gainax went straight to work. Once famous playwright Kazuki Nakashima finished writing the story, all they needed was director Hiroyuki Imaishi to direct the project itself. What happened afterwards? Let's just say that the studio came out and presented a mecha anime to the likes nobody has ever seen before. I'll get straight to the point. Gurren Lagann isn't a show. It's a life-altering experience disguised as a show. The countless amount of video essays already should be a clear indication that Gurren Lagann doesn't just talk the talk, it walks the walk. No, it runs straight at you, it gets in your face, and it keeps that same energy for 27 episodes, or 26 if you don't want to count that pesky summary episode. You don't have to like mecha anime to enjoy Gurren Lagann. This is a type of anime where you kind of just sit down and let the anime speak for itself. It won Best Character Design and Best TV Production of 2008 and was considered the 4th best anime of the 2000s. After creating Gurren Lagann, Gainax would last a good 10 years, and yet from the moment they finished the show to their eventual collapse, this was the last impactful anime Studio Gainax has produced. Penny and Stocking was really famous, but it was famous for different reasons. It never came off as a show that would inspire an entire generation of young, impressionable teenagers. I mean, do you see full-fledged documentaries on Penny and Stocking? Which sounds like something that I would totally watch. Gainax's last hurrah before their strong core of producers and animators began to separate was Gurren Lagann. And because of it, we can look back at all that hard work and say with confidence, with our chests, that it stands next to some of the mecha anime greats. Who can forget the iconic Pokeball etched into the Gundam itself? You honestly might think that this is a redemption story of a lifetime, but these types of things occur more often than you think, especially in the entertainment industry. The famous JRPG series Fire Emblem can be a great comparison, more particularly Fire Emblem Awakening. Intelligent Systems released Fire Emblem Awakening as a final goodbye to the series, because at the time, Fire Emblem games especially were not flying off the shelves. It was a video game series everyone thought was on their final leg. Yes, I know that Gurren Lagann is an anime and Fire Emblem is a video game, but the message can still be applied in this case. The company's directors were responsible for building the best team that they believe would give this series a proper farewell. It was because of this newfound inspiration by the team, Fire Emblem Awakening would end up being one of the most successful games of the franchise. 2015 me ate this stuff up like a kid who just got free McDonald's from their mom. There was a piece of everything that pulled people into playing the game. What resonated with me the most about Fire Emblem Awakening was the music. You know, from the classic song Conquest, which made grinding in the game less boring and more fun. This was also the time where they were experimenting with duet music. So the moment when you engage an enemy, the music changes from a vibe that feels like a nice quiet day to You get what I'm trying to say? Even the music when you're in the preparation screen really immerses you to believe that you are the leader of this small little army. And of course, you can't talk about Fire Emblem Awakening if you don't mention id purpose. Like there's this wave of pressure that instantly hits you. All the hours that you put into the game was for this very moment. You deserve the best top of the line music to pair with it. The music itself should be proof enough that this game would single-handedly be the game that saved the franchise, even though the series now has sort of lost its way and now has turned into the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Gainax really needed that energy when it came time to really flesh out the needs for Gurren Lagann. What are some of the things that they needed to prioritize in order to make another great mecha? The production philosophy at Studio Gainax was as clear as they could make it. If I were to give an analogy, Kamina is the embodiment of Gainax, wanting to tell the entire world that despite their eventual departure, we still know how to make good anime. Speaking of composition, let's talk about a man responsible for writing and making music, the composer. In my opinion, Gurren Lagann is the most important soundtrack in anime, and you have this man to thank. Taku Iwasaki is a professional music composer and arranger who made countless anime soundtracks that would prove beneficial when it came to the creation of the Gurren Lagann soundtracks. He worked with Studio Gainax and basically he was told two things. 1. Produce absolute heat. 2. Go back to rule number 1. Iwasaki would go on a musical tear because he would produce not only 10 tracks, not 20 tracks, but roughly about 40 total tracks in this anime. I know it's his job, but for a one season only anime original, that number is just way too insane. I'm dumbfounded, flabbergasted even. Honestly guys, I think I need to sit down for a bit. You might not realize it, but in anime, sometimes it's not just the story that is the single driving force that sells the show. Music composers are very much capable of doing that as well. Going back to Fire Emblem Awakening, I remember so vividly that when Chrom lost his older sister, not only was that particular scene very impactful, but the music afterwards, oh my god. Don't Speak Her Name was a song that was meant for a single battle that nobody wanted to fight. I'm gonna stop talking about Fire Emblem, but just remember, the story and the music go hand to hand. For Gurren Lagann, Gainax wanted to strike a balance, have an extremely good story with extremely good music. And at the current state Gainax was in at the time, it would only be natural for Studio Gainax to look for the best of the best when it came to music composers. Iwasaki kind of just walked in at the right place at the right time. When he was hired, he was laser focused, so dead set on making sure that this soundtrack represented Gurren Lagann the best way humanly possible. And guess what? He came out of that music room carrying a heavy sack of cash because he got his bag. He was able to complement a already addictive and immersive story with a musical soundtrack that only makes certain scenes in the anime much more memorable. There are a lot of video essays about Gurren Lagann. Many of them are the reason why that inspired me to make my own. Most of them briefly touch upon how the music is sort of the cherry on top that completes the series, but nobody has made a full-fledged video essay talking about the cherry. Just like how a lot of anime like Ashita no Joe or hundreds of Gundam anime that inspired Gurren Lagann's story, there is a separate catalog of anime that inspired Iwasaki's production of Gurren Lagann's music. And that's why you're seeing this video today. We are going to dissect the cherry from talking about Iwasaki's previous soundtracks first, then fast forwarding to how his work greatly influenced with how he approached the soundtrack to Gurren Lagann, hopefully tying everything together like a nice little bow and you getting a newfound appreciation for Gurren Lagann through a random guy who loves to dissect small things about music. Let's begin, shall we?
Here's a real high-class bout, and begin!
In the 27 episodes that we are given of Gurren Lagann, we can separate the series' story and categorize them into 4 acts, with 3 major shifts: the shift of new hope, the shift of despair, and the final, most impactful shift, reflection. With every major shift that occurs in the storyline of Gurren Lagann, a shift in the music happens as well. Therefore, we can conclude that each section of Gurren Lagann will have a different type of energy or vibe to it, coupled with music that will match that energy. The story and music going hand to hand is what happens to all 4 sections of Gurren Lagann. Certain soundtracks belong to that section and that section alone. However, where there is a story to compose music for, we also have humble beginnings. What was some of the music Iwasaki composed that inspired him to make the soundtracks we now see in Gurren Lagann? Born in the city of Tokyo and graduating from a prestigious university in Japan, Iwasaki's resume of music is nothing short of spectacular. He's never done an interview, and he's rarely been on video. The only thing that we have that we can accurately say about him is that he loves his sunglasses. He's truly a person who doesn't care about outside noises and focuses on only his craft. If I had to describe his music overall, it would be sad, but brings forth a sense of unwavering motivation to do better, to never be complacent in one's current lifestyle. The soundtracks to Rurouni Kenshin, Binchotan. You know what? Just listen to the opening of Angel Heart. The explosion of passionate jazz will make you think about life harder than a 80s private investigator in a cheesy detective movie. Iwasaki is the master of the melancholic feel. If you listen to Imasoko ni Iru Boku's Here and There is a lingering guitar that is so similar to Gurren Lagann's elegy for Kamina's father, now a skeleton. Or listen to the saxophones of 0091, Suddenly Last Night. You can't tell me that these 2 tracks sound so eerily similar. These tracks give you a feeling of the moment is sad now, but the future holds so much potential type vibe. Iwasaki had the guts to name the song about Kamina's dad for it to be only used one time in episode 25, where the scene wasn't even talking about Kamina's dad. It was about Kitan, reminiscing about Kamina. Maybe it was because it was Kamina's dad that first inspired Kamina's actions, then later it was Kamina who inspired Kitan. Sort of the song is like an ode to the first guy who said, to hell with it all, I'm going to just rebel type feeling. Let me know what you guys think down below. I really need the engagement. From a surface level, right, it's true that Iwasaki was responsible for making a complete soundtrack that complements the theme of Gurren Lagann, but in actuality, he was responsible for composing exclusive music. Each music is dedicated to each section of the show, containing varying moods or emotions as well as the environment in which our main characters are in for that specific moment. For example, the first section of Gurren Lagann is rather short, since it's the first section between the beginning and New Hope. But our New Hope isn't just given on a silver platter. We don't start with the story in a neutral way or on the line. We actually start here, below the line. If the line symbolized the surface, the viewers are immediately sent under the line or underground to a not so beautiful place where humanity is almost bordering straight up extinction. Kamina and Simone are still underground, drilling their way to seek the surface, and with the help of our heroine Yoko, when they eventually get to the top, this is where we get our first major shift of the series. Kamina, Simone, and Yoko take the view all in as Drill to Heaven with Your XXX starts playing. And do you know who you have to thank for such a deep and beautiful introduction to the story? Well, obviously the story writers, but don't forget about this man. Don't forget about him. Remember, composers are people too. There is music from the Gurren Lagann soundtrack that was meant only to highlight the introduction, like Moles Are Moles, right? As Simon gives a internal monologue as to why he drills underground to expand the city. Or when Kamina's attempt to leave the village by carelessly riding bulls with Buta Dreams of Spirals plays in the background, leaves an almost immediate impression to the viewers with a wail of life that nobody wants to live. Yet they do it anyway because they have no choice, because the surface is dangerous. And none of these soundtracks would be possible without Iwasaki producing the OSTs for Imasoko ni Iru Boku, a piece of work about literal human survival in a dystopian setting, similar to having no choice but to live underground in Gurren Lagann. Or the music that plays during like every eye-catch picture in the middle of each episode. That sound, it feels like it was inspired off the loud and messy rock and jazz when producing the OSTs for 0091. Keep in mind that these are just two anime that primarily inspired the very first episodes of Gurren Lagann. Before being hired to make the Gurren Lagann soundtracks, Iwasaki was very experimental on how he approached certain anime soundtracks. He would have times where he would just hire a full-blown orchestra for a song like Asatanti in Black Cat. Later, he would transition to a whole new genre of music, like rap. He would sometimes hire singers to rap on top of his beats. I encourage you to listen to the entire Kakaishi soundtrack because you'll end up listening to music that sound like this.
Copper stopper rootin' tootin' shootin' cannibal, eating my as if I was Dr. Hannibal.
Unlike the short and sweet spectacle of Act 1, Act 2 is a lot more longer, which means that we get to see the art of Iwasaki's music begin to take shape. The music slowly evolves as Simon and friends gather more allies that align to their cause, and the villains getting more and more vocal once the rumors start spreading. The introduction of Viral with the gritty track Nico Pool is a very reminiscent of Linkin Park's Points of Authority. Sort of gives a time capsule of how significant punk rock was back in the mid-2000s. Or how about the introduction to the Black siblings under the track Wow, Three Sisters? The title, funny enough, is sort of ignoring the most important sibling of them all. Even a one-episode monster gets her own soundtrack for just a filler episode. Don't get me started on the Peeping Tom soundtrack. Iwasaki, here, just take a seat, buddy. What were you thinking? Out of all the soundtracks in Act 2, the most important one has to be All of You Get Burned. This is the quintessential song that needs to be played when danger is at a all-time high and all odds are against you. When faced against a mecha bigger than you, when the numbers are not in your favor, oh, that's okay, just play this song. And suddenly you have a equal playing field. This is what happens every time. When this song is being played, there is new hope, a second wind for our team Daiguron to prove themselves that against all odds, they can always come out on top. Right?
Later, buddy.
If the rain could speak, what do you think it would say on this very infamous day? The rain can be its own instrumental. It doesn't have to sound anything special to send a message any better. Just the heavy sound of water hitting the floor is good enough to make Kamina's death stick with you. This is where Act 3 begins. Say goodbye to the music meant to lift your spirits. Say hello to a section of Gurren Lagann where our heroes have to face such a very harsh loss, where they have to regroup and pick up the pieces. And despite the wins they continue to get throughout the series, this lingering feeling of no identity carries all the way to the time skip. Despite building a city where humans could thrive, Simon gets arrested and sentenced to death by his very own co-pilot, his friend. From here, we see Simon's team, once united with an unwavering resolve in defeating the enemy, start to turn on each other. Honestly, how did we even end up here? During this entire ordeal, the track As Rap Is a Man's Soul, well, maybe, I don't know, starts playing. And as this scene unfolds, you begin to wonder, were the achievements that brought upon Kamina City out of passion or out of demanding obligation? The sudden harsh realization finally kicks in. The spark that will pierce the heavens died a long time ago, and our main characters never realized it. And this song is a chilling reminder of what you've lost.
see you for a while. And you have to go and turn into a real boring bitch. Nia.
Just when we thought despair was going to win, we now get thrusted into the final act. That goes without saying that the most influential track to come out of Act 4 is in fact Libera Me from Hell. For a while, I knew that this track existed even before watching Gurren Lagann, and at the time it really sounded like the song belonged to an epic final battle of the ages. Simon finally proves his grit. He makes Rossiau grit his teeth and is now reunited with the team, ready to face the danger that threatens humanity. I believe the timing of the song couldn't have been any better. We watch all the members of Daiguron reject their sappy dreams presented by the anti-spirals, because at this point, we all know that true happiness is earned, not given nor deserved. Out of all the final act music Iwasaki has produced, I would argue and say that this was his magnum opus at the time. He was able to implement a perfect chemistry of both orchestra and rap into the song. Both mediums he was very familiar with when he produced the OSTs for Black Cat and Kakaishi. He himself decided that no other type of music would work better than orchestra and rap. Why? Just remember what Simon said.
The dreams of those who have fallen, the hopes of those who will follow. Those two sets of dreams weave together into a double helix, drilling a path towards tomorrow.
The men who fell that brought in the wave of orchestra and the men that brought forth the rap of the future created the helix that made Libera Me from Hell possible to produce. This is what I tell my friends sometimes when they don't believe me that there is a synergy between the story and its music. The Gurren Lagann soundtrack was inspired by the old and inspired by the new to form a double helix that will pierce the heavens for futures to come.
Lagann! Impact!
Time flies when you're having fun, but all fun must come to an end. And in the case of Simon, we're presented a sad rendition of Love Conservative as he said his final goodbye to the woman that saved him from despair all those years ago. We get our final time skip, our final scene where Simon meets with a child of the new generation, meant to signify that Simon accomplished what he wanted his way by single-handedly saving all of humanity. With your XXX, the very final song of the series is played, and the night shines as bright as ever. And just like that, Gurren Lagann is finished. If music is art, then art inspires art. Just like how Gurren Lagann was inspired by many works that came before it, the music composed by Iwasaki was a testament to how talented he was at the time of composing the music for Gurren Lagann. You might not vibe with the genre of anime, but you can definitely vibe with the music. Gainax really struck gold when they hired Iwasaki. You can tell that the work of a single man was able to manifest in order to create what is known as the best anime soundtrack in history. Because after Iwasaki finished the Gurren Lagann soundtrack, immediately afterwards he would work with a very low-key, very underground rapper. You probably never heard of him. I think his name was Lotus Juice, the man who single-handedly shaped people's childhood with the Persona 3 soundtracks. Yeah, he worked with him to make a lot of the songs in the Soul Eater OST. I'm still bumping to Death the Kid on the daily. And you can't tell me that So Scandalous is a certified hood classic. He also made the famous Pillarman theme from JoJo Part 2. Honestly, if you worked with anything JoJo related, you've honestly reached pinnacle success. You know, round of applause for this absolute beast of a composer. What I got out of watching Gurren Lagann, what I got out of making this video, and hopefully you did too, was no matter if you're young or old, no matter if you've made all your dreams come true or you're currently soul searching for your own version of success, you will resonate with a wide range of cool stuff that this show has to offer. For me personally, what I got was the music. Soon it might perhaps be a lost piece of media, but one thing's for sure, when you do decide to pick up Gurren Lagann, strap down, because you are in for a very wild ride.